The deck of the orbital station Aegis 7 shook. A deep groan ran through the metal bones of the place. Red lights flashed, painting the faces of the running crew in pulses of emergency crimson. The air was thick with the smell of burned wiring and sweat. Chief Weapons Master Greg Olson stood firm against the shaking. He was in the main hangar, a vast space usually filled with ships. Now it was a triage center and ammo dump. The massive outer doors were scarred and dented from near misses. Before him stood the alien, Vorlak. It was tall, with a hard, insect-like shell and 4 arms. Its eyes were like dark pools of oil. This was the Veln, an ally against the common enemy, the Cathar. But the alliance felt thin. Olson held out his weapon. It was a plasma broadsword, the best his unit had. The blade glowed with a steady blue light. "This is our finest for close combat," Olson said, his voice loud over the alarm. "It can cut through reinforced plasteel." Vorlak took the sword in one of its upper limbs. It felt strangely light in the alien's grip. The Veln did not test the edge or admire the craft. It simply held the blade at each end. Then, with a motion too quick to follow, Vorlak bent its arms. It snapped the sword in two. The sound of the breaking metal was sharp and final. The 2 pieces clattered on the deck floor. The blue glow died. "Your finest is a child's toy," Vorlak buzzed, its voice like stones grinding together. "The Cathar warriors, their personal shields are impenetrable. Your energy, your projectiles, they mean nothing. We are losing this war because your species is inferior." The word hung in the air. Inferior. It hit Olson harder than the station's tremors. He looked down at the broken pieces of his sword. It was more than a tool. It was a symbol of everything they had. And it was nothing. A new, louder alarm blared. A voice screamed over the comms. "Breach! Sector 7! They are inside the hull!" Panic spread through the hangar. Soldiers grabbed their rifles, their faces pale. Olson did not move. His eyes were fixed on a Cathar combat drone that was part of the Veln's display. It was inactive, but its personal shield was still active. A perfect, shimmering sphere of energy surrounded it. Not a scratch, not a flaw. He saw it then. A different path. He turned to his young apprentice, Leo, who was staring at the broken sword in horror. "Leo!" Olson's voice was flat, devoid of all emotion. "Forget the sword. It's the wrong question." Leo looked at him, confused. "Get me a high-yield plasma torch, and a diamond-tipped engraver from the machining shop, and access to all the data we have on their shield harmonics, now." Leo just stood there for a second, stunned by the strange request in the middle of an invasion. "Move!" Olson barked. As Leo ran off, a massive explosion tore through the far end of the hangar. It was silent for a blink. Then the sound hit them, a roar of fire and tearing metal. The blast swallowed a whole squad of human soldiers who were running to reinforce the breach. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. Olson did not flinch. He did not look away from the Cathar drone's perfect, unbreakable shield. He would not die using a child's toy. He would die trying to understand the wall. The reinforced door to Lab 4 hissed shut behind them, sealing out the chaos. The room was a tomb of failed technology. Wrecked Cathar drones lay on tables, their inner workings exposed. In one corner, a dead Marine still sat slumped in a chair, a data slate in his cold hand. Olson ignored the body. He slammed the plasma torch and the engraver onto a central workbench. "Leo, the data, now." Leo, his hands shaking, plugged a cable into a console. "Their shields are a phased energy matrix," he said, his voice thin. "It redistributes any impact. Hitting it harder just makes the whole shield stronger. It's perfect." Olson grunted. He wasn't listening to the problem. He was looking for the flaw. He powered up the plasma torch. Its low hum filled the room. On the table before him was a small, captured Cathar shield generator. Its protective field was active, a faint, shimmering dome of light. "Nothing is perfect," Olsen said. He didn't aim for a sustained burn. That was what the Cathar expected. That was what their shield was built for. Instead, he pulsed the torch. On, off, on, off. A rapid, uneven rhythm based on the harmonic weaknesses Leo had flagged. The shield flared with each pulse, bright then dim, like a struggling heart. "It's not failing," Leo said, his hope fading. "I don't need it to fail," Olsen replied, his eyes locked on the target. With his other hand, he picked up the diamond-tipped engraver. It was a fine, precise tool for etching serial numbers onto metal. He pressed its sharp point against the shimmering surface of the shield, and pushed. The engraver did not break the shield. It did not cause an explosion. For a single, impossible second, the diamond tip met resistance. Then it slid through. It was like pushing a needle through thick cloth. The shield flexed and shimmered around the tool, but it held its overall integrity. Olsen moved his hand. The diamond tip screeched as it made contact with the actual metal housing of the generator beneath the shield. He carved a single, deep, straight line. A scar. He pulled the tools back. The shield remained. It was still active, still a perfect, unbroken sphere of energy. But now, beneath that flawless defense on the generator itself, was a permanent, physical mark. Leo stared, his mouth open. He looked from the untouched shield to the scar on the metal and back again. You didn't break it." "We don't break the shield," Olsen said, a grim, hard light in his eyes. "We make it irrelevant. We show them their perfect defense is a lie. Now we just need to get close enough to do that to a living one." A deep, resonant thud echoed through the lab. It was not an explosion from outside. This was closer. It was the sound of something huge hitting the other side of the lab's reinforced door. They froze. Another thud. The metal of the door groaned. A seam near the frame began to glow a dull, angry red. Something on the other side was applying immense heat and force. Leo backed away from the door, his face white. Olsen grabbed the modified tools, his knuckles white. The red glow spread, outlining the shape of the door. Then, with a shriek of tearing metal, a single, sharp black claw the size of a man's forearm punched through the center of the door. It twisted, ripping the metal apart like paper. Through the growing hole they saw a flicker of chitinous armor and the shimmer of a personal shield. They were not alone anymore. The lab door tore open with a deafening screech. A Cathar warrior filled the doorway. It was a giant of black chitin and sharp angles, standing on two powerful legs. Its personal shield shimmered around it like a second skin. In one of its 4 arms it held a weapon that glowed with sickly green light. The 2 Marines in the lab opened fire. Red laser bolts slammed into the shield. They flashed brightly and vanished, absorbed without effect. The warrior did not even slow down. It raised its weapon. A pulse of green energy shot out. One Marine vanished in a cloud of ash. The other was cut in half by a sweep of a bladed arm. Olsen stood his ground. He held the clumsy-looking tool, the torch and engraver now welded together. "Diaz!" he yelled at the combat engineer. "Draw its fire! Leo, the scrambler, now!" Diaz, a big man with a grim face, did not hesitate. He screamed a wordless curse and charged, firing his rifle directly into the warrior's face. It was a suicide move. The Cathar turned its weapon toward him. The green light flared. Diaz was gone, vaporized. But he had bought them 1 second. Leo, his hands shaking violently, slapped a button on a small box. A piercing, screeching sound filled the room. It was the harmonic scrambler. The warrior's shield flickered. The shimmering field wavered like a disturbed pond. It did not fail, but it was no longer perfect. This was the opening. Olsen lunged. He did not aim for the creature's body. He ran straight at its shield. He jammed the pulsed plasma torch against the shimmering surface. The shield flared, fighting the erratic energy. Olsen ignored the warrior's bladed arm as it swung at him. The blow was deflected by the very shield he was attacking. He pressed the diamond-tipped engraver against the energy field. Using the tiny instability, he pushed. The tip slid through. It made contact with the hard, black chest plate of the warrior's armor. He began to carve. He was not trying to kill it. He was not looking for a weak spot. He etched a symbol. 3 interlocking circles. The mark of the human confederacy. The diamond tip screeched against the alien metal. Sparks flew. The Cathar warrior stopped. It looked down. It saw the human tool touching its armor, a thing that should have been impossible. It saw the symbol being permanently scarred into its body. Its clicking sounds of fury turned into a high, shrill shriek of pure disbelief. It was a sound of broken certainty. Olsen finished the mark and leaped back, breathing hard. The warrior stood frozen, staring at the defaced symbol on its chest. Its weapon hung limply in its grip. The act of marking had done what bullets could not. It had stunned the creature. From the shattered doorway, more shapes moved. A second Cathar warrior entered, then a third. Their shields glowed brightly. They advanced, then they too stopped. Their multifaceted eyes were locked on their comrade. They saw the human symbol etched onto its chest. They saw the impossible. They did not attack. They simply stood there, a silent, shocked circle around their marked brother, the one who had been made unclean. The image spread like a shockwave. A Marine's helmet cam feed, shaky and blurred, showed the impossible. A Cathar warrior, standing frozen, with the human symbol carved into its chest. The video jumped from ship to ship, from station to bunker. On the bridge of the command ship, Indomitable, Admiral Cole watched the feed on the main screen. The grim silence of the bridge broke. A junior officer cheered, then another. Cole did not cheer. A hard, cold smile touched his lips. "Olsen is a madman," he said to his XO, "and he just handed us a weapon." The order went out fleet-wide. The strategy had a name now: ghost marking. The goal was not kill count, it was mark count. The change was instant and chaotic. On the colony world below, the war shifted. Squads of engineers, protected by Marines, rushed into battle. They carried modified torches and engravers. They did not aim for kills. They fought to get close, to touch the enemy, to leave a permanent scar. The psychological blow was deeper than any physical one. A marked Cathar warrior was considered tainted. They would often be abandoned by their units, left to wander the battlefield in a state of shock. The Cathar advance on the colony world slowed. Their perfect, orderly lines began to crumble. They were facing an enemy that fought with shame. Olsen was on the ground, in the thick of it. Smoke filled the air. The sky was a dull orange from the burning city. Before them stood a Cathar command walker. It was a 100-foot-tall monster of metal and weapons, its shield a colossal dome of shimmering energy. It was crushing the last human resistance in the sector. "That one," Olsen said over the comms, pointing at the walker's leg. "We mark that." It was a suicide run. Laser fire from the walker's smaller guns tore up the ground around them. Marines provided covering fire, their shots useless against the giant's shield. Olsen and 2 other engineers ran, low and fast. They reached the massive metal leg. The shield hummed with power just inches away. Olsen pressed his torch against the energy field. The walker's shield was far more powerful. It flared violently, but the pulsed rhythm held. He activated the engraver. It was like trying to scratch a mountain. Sparks flew as the diamond tip bit into the thick armor. He carved a single, massive human handprint. The walker stopped. All its guns fell silent. The giant machine just stood there. It was a statue. The mark, a simple human handprint, was a desecration that paralyzed the crew inside. Olsen stood on the walker's hull, looking out. He saw Cathar ground units pulling back. He saw human soldiers rising from their trenches. Their shouts of victory carried on the smoky wind. For the first time, he felt it. Hope. They had found the key. His comms crackled. It was Admiral Cole's voice, tight and urgent. "Olsen, fall back now. We intercepted their command channel. They've identified you. They aren't retreating. They're reconfiguring." Olsen's hope turned to ice in his chest. He looked up at the orange sky. "What does that mean?" Olsen asked. "It means they are done playing," Cole replied. "They just launched a single projectile on a trajectory for your position. It's not a missile. They're throwing a moonlet at you." The sky began to burn. It was not the orange of fire. It was the deep, angry red of something massive entering the atmosphere. A new sun was being born directly above them, growing larger every second. It was the moonlet, a mountain of rock and iron falling from the sky. On the command channel, panic turned to a terrible silence. There were no orders to give, no evasive maneuvers. This was not a battle. It was an erasure. Greg Olsen stood on the hull of the Silent Walker. The wind whipped at his clothes. He watched the fireball grow. He felt the heat on his face. He saw the truth. The Cathar were not just trying to kill him. They were trying to kill the idea. They feared the mark more than the missile. A strange calm settled over him. They could break their world, but they could not break the message. He opened a channel. His voice was flat and clear, cutting through the static and the fear. It went to every ship, every helmet, every screen in the human fleet. "They think this is an answer," he said. "It is not. It is an admission of fear. They can shatter our ships and break our bodies, but they cannot stop a mark from being made." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Cole watched the main screen. It showed Olsen's helmet cam feed. The view was of the apocalyptic light descending. Every ship, every soldier. "Broadcast this," Olsen said. "Show them what we are." As the moonlet blotted out the entire sky, its light becoming everything, Olsen turned his back to it. He faced his own helmet cam. The light behind him was so bright it washed out his features, leaving him a dark silhouette against the end of the world. He did not look at the doom. He looked directly into the lens. He raised the engraver. He pressed the diamond tip against the thick glass of his own helmet. And he began to carve. The sound of the engraver screeched over the comms. He etched the first of the 3 interlocking circles. The tool bit into the glass, sending a spiderweb of cracks out from the mark. He worked with slow, deliberate movements. The ground beneath him shook violently. The air screamed. He finished the first circle and started the second. The light from the sky was blinding now. The feed began to distort with static. On 1,000 ships, humans watched. They did not see the explosion. They saw the tip of the engraver, steady and sure, making its final, defiant mark. They saw a man, in his last seconds, not praying or screaming, but writing. He was etching their symbol into history. He completed the third circle just as the light consumed everything. The screen did not go black. It did not show the impact. It froze. The last image transmitted was not of fire and destruction. It was a close-up of the helmet's faceplate. The 3 circles were etched there, deep and permanent. And through the etched symbol, past the cracks, was the faint, determined outline of Greg Olsen's face, still looking out at them. The screen held that image for a long moment. A final mark made not on the enemy, but on eternity itself. Then, and only then, did it dissolve into silent, endless static.